Dr. Law Mefor, Commissioner for Information in Anambra State, and Dr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, Provost Police Public Relations School, Abuja, a psychologist, security consultant, and former Commissioner of Police. We'll have both of them speak to us, but I think I understand we should have Dr. Emmanuel Ojukwu to join us first, and we carry on as regards this. So, Dr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, a very sad day. Can you help us make sense of a foundation that will normally give palliatives to people every year, and all of a sudden this year witnessed an unusual surge level based on what the O.B. Jackson Foundation is saying? Can you help us make sense of this?
Well, first is to sympathize with the bereaved families and to wish those who are hospitalized a quick recovery and return to safety. And again, the organizers to also sympathize with them. Perhaps what they planned was to put smiles on faces of people, but now we are having body bags, a season of celebration, people are mourning. It speaks to the fact that events of this nature are not minor events. From the narrative, they hold it every year. It's a major event that requires at least 6 months to plan. To plan it will involve all stakeholders. To plan it will require an assessment of risks involved at a time such as this, having regard to the environment of hunger in the land and poverty, having regard to what is called the psychology of scarcity. From narrative your colleague gave, about 20,000 were asking for palliatives. How many bags of rice or other items, or how many packages has that company provided? For how many people have they made provisions? These things we factored in. It shows lack of preparation or inadequate preparation and not paying attention to the value that we ought to attach to lives. If proper things are done, we will not be carrying body bags in a state of mourning. Over 70 lives now, all across the nation, in 1 week. Our flag should be flying at half-mast, as a matter of fact.
Flags should be flying at half-mast. It is a time for sober reflection and perhaps a day for national mourning. But the question on a lot of people's lips is, how can we prevent such incidents from happening? One incident in Ibadan is one too many, but then you have a succession of events across 3 locations: Ibadan, Abuja, Anambra, Okija in Anambra State. What are the lessons that we can learn from this incident, and how, very importantly, can we prevent these kinds of events from happening again? Then I really want to point out the psychology of scarcity you talked about, because I think that's something we need to touch on. Can you expand on that for us a bit? Because there's some people who just that mentality of lack would make them act in certain manners that perhaps even don't even need the food as much, but just that thought or psychology of scarcity, like you said, could lead to such incidents. I'd like you to please share on these things.
Okay. Now, we're in a nation where we don't place much value on merit, where the just don't get justice. People don't get what ought to come to them on account of maybe where they come from or some other factors. So materials meant for a particular community, a number of persons who are close to the powers that be will appropriate 3/4 of them and leave 1/4 for the rest. It makes it scarce. People hoard these materials. You and I are very much aware. Some time ago, during COVID-19 or whatever, there were palliatives to ease the problems caused by COVID-19. Some persons kept these things in their houses, making them scarce. So whenever such things are about to come out, there'll be the struggle for the survival of the fittest, knowing full well that what is available will be made even scarcer by those who are closest to it under prebendalism. So there's the psychology of even zero sum. The more of it somebody gets, the less is available to others. Now everybody wants to have a hand in the pie, have a bite of that cake that is scarce. By so doing, there will be the rush to even remove others and get there. In that rush, there will be stampede. People will die. And mark you, even as people are being stumbled upon, people are dying, people are still surging ahead to get that scarce resource because people are hungry. People who are hungry, they are also angry. So their temperament is not the best. They may not even listen to advice because they've seen a scarce resource, which they think is vital to their survival for the day, and they'll go all out for it. That psychology makes for reactions, impulsive behavior, not minding whose ox is God.
Both are guests on ground now. So that's Dr. Mefor, Commissioner for Information, Anambra State, and Dr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, Provost Police Public Relations School, Abuja. Thanks both for joining us this morning.
Dr. Mefor, I'd like to come to you and say, what are the procedures put in place for crowd control as regards the state in Anambra State? Do you have like a safety commission like they have in Lagos? You know, something put in place where you have big crowd events. How does the state government react to things like this?
Yeah, good morning, Rufai, and good morning, everyone in the studio there. Yeah, well, you see, the issue of crowd control is essentially left to the police and the security agencies. We don't have what you may call a regulatory framework like a law or something. And you know, Anambra people are essentially very philanthropic. And it's not just Obi Jackson. So many, the Anambra do palliatives every year, every time they do that. And that of Obi Jackson sort of has gained a reputation over time. And that is essentially accounting for the surge. And again, of course, there are structures in place that could have been deployed to take care of crowd control. Anambra, you know, is made up of about 179 communities, perhaps a little more. Each of these towns and communities have unions. They have villages, they have leadership. You have a town union presidents general. You have ward leaders, apart from the village heads. You know, so ordinarily, when a huge population is anticipated in a matter such as this, what should have been done was to utilize these structures that exist. And many actually do so. Because I'm aware that some people who share palliatives pass through the town union leadership. The Ndigwe, they also have structures spread across their towns. And this is what is on ground and what ought to have been utilized, not just by Obi Jackson, but by any other person that should be sharing palliatives that are likely to attract a huge number of people. Anything more than 100 persons is already huge.
Yes. Dr. Mefor, I hope you can hear me. All right. I find it quite curious that you say that when people hold large events, from Rufai's question, that the government is not responsible, there's no protocol on ground, that it's the responsibility of the police and security agencies. That's quite curious, because the governor is the chief security officer of the state. And like he cited an example in Lagos State, there's this Lagos Safety Commission based on crowd control. I would imagine that even if you didn't have it in the past, this incident should highlight to the governor and the government that you need to put that in place in your state. You can't say that, the people that, for instance, if we ask, if there's crowd control, that people that passed away is as a result of maybe the police and security agencies. So I want to ask you, if it didn't exist in the past, are you working towards now putting a measure in place for a protocol for large gatherings like this?
Yeah, if you saw the press statement put out there by the Chief Press Secretary to the governor, you would see that that contemplation is already on. That certainly some kind of regulation will be put in place going forward. It is necessary now, but again, like I said, individuals should also try to utilize structures that are already in place. I mentioned them, and the state certainly will do something to put some kind of regulation on ground. You know, certainly. It's contained in the press statement that was issued the day this incident happened.
All right, I'll come to Dr. Ojukwu now, but Dr. Mefor, maybe after he answers, I'd like you to still go back to this, because if you're saying that the state, individuals should adhere to, the structures on ground, the structures on ground, like you highlighted, are largely informal. It's not laid out procedures whereby if you fail to meet these criteria, you would be penalized.
I'm not sure
because you talked about okay, please explain. You talk about unions. You talk about what is the government structure.
There will be a lesson now. Government structure is coming, and it has to complement the existing structures. And I have mentioned what those structures are, and people have access to those structures. And there are people who have also shared palliatives over the years in Anambra State that have followed those structures. And they were able to decentralize the process and that way avoid the stampede because that in itself is a kind of crowd control. This is a crowd problem. It's not a problem of hunger as such. So it's very important. Government will come up with a regulatory framework, but even before then, people need to take the advantage of town union structures, the ward structures, Ndigwe, and the village structures, and send the palliatives through these units. And that way they avoid so much of this nature. Yes.
Government will come up with the regulatory structure after people have died, Abi? It's after people have died, government will come. Why didn't government come up with regulatory structures before now, before things like this started happening? And as we speak today, if you have a case of stampede in Anambra State, who do we call?
If you come again, I didn't get that question. If you have stampede, who do we call?
If you have a case of stampede in Anambra State, what are the numbers to call as we speak?
Of course, there are numbers to call. There are numbers for responses to emergencies such as this.
What are the numbers to call?
For example, you have 51111, that's an emergency number in Anambra State, and there are other numbers as well. And there are statutory agencies in Anambra State as well that respond depending on what has really happened. So it is not as if Anambra State does not have anything with which to respond to emergencies. That is not correct. It depends on what the issues are. For example, what has happened in the case of Okija and the palliative sharing of Obi Jackson is not quite peculiar as such, because it's not an Anambra thing. It has happened in certain other places where the issues of crowd control were not put in place. So if it happened in Abuja.
All right.
So all right. You can see that you learn from things like this and modify your processes to ensure better outcome next time.
All right, thank you. As we begin to wrap up, Dr. Ojukwu, the question we'd asked before that we lost connection with you, which is simply what are some of the recommendations for avoiding such things so we don't have to learn from tragedies, but we are proactive about what to do to prevent tragedies like this?
Okay, normally it is said that when you fail to plan, that means you have actually planned to fail. A major event such as this must have factored in all the stakeholders. The stakeholders are those who manage the event based on the nature of that event. It's a major event. People are hungry and they want to get food. That some people are going for palliative means that they are hungry. Not everybody goes for that. So we must not deny hunger in the land. It is here recorded. People are hungry. Now you want to give something to suit as a palliative to bring it down. You need to plan. What is venue? Right now, I'm in Alimosho. You want to give food to people in Alimosho where you have how many millions of people? Then you use a small stadium that will take 50, as the case may be. No. You need to look for a better event, a better venue. In that venue, you have entry points, exit points. In that venue, you have communication network. Those outside compare with those inside. In that venue, you have distribution points. Who comes in first? In that venue, you give numbers to people. And if, as in the case of Anambra, you have the 20,000 coming, nothing stops you from staggering it. On Monday, women should come. On Tuesday, men should come. On Wednesday, children. On Thursday, people with disabilities should come. Space it out so as to be able to manage it. And then have, in that particular venue, people to help those who may fall sick. As they're hungry, some may be sick. You need medical assistance. You need ambulance to rescue people and there and evacuate them to whatever hospital. You need those to apply first aid. Right. Nigerians must not die over what we can prevent. Absolutely. We can prevent it.
Thank you.
The police will plan, if the police are involved in the program, because it's their job to make sure we maintain public safety. It's part of Section 4 of Police Act. It's their job to protect lives and property. Right. Wherever lives are in Nigeria, the police must be involved. And somebody should be held account for this loss of Nigerian lives for nothing.
Yes. Thank you so much to both our guests, Dr. Emmanuel Ojukwu and Dr. Mefor. The conversation certainly still continues. Thank you for your time.